Welcome to another episode of Esoterica by the Salty Witches podcast. Um, we've got quite a bit to discuss today. I am going to go ahead and provide all of you who tune into this episode with another spell. Today, I thought that we would focus on a little bit of protection. On our last episode, I shared a couple of spells on, um, spells of a more baneful kind of nature. And I also think it's good for us to be kind of well-rounded in our practice. So today I'm going to share a spell that would really be geared more toward you protecting your home and really any other space that you might really have access to, or that you could see would maybe be needing additional protection in the coming weeks, months, years, you know. Anyway, but we'll do that a little bit later. Okay, we have a few other things to kind of address first, and we have some questions that I want to make sure that we get to before we kind of get into anything else. And these were questions that kind of came in a few different places over the last couple of weeks, at least since our last Esoterica episode. Um, our buddy Jack has always got just questions, and it's actually a good thing because Jack is always really good at asking questions that are they get you thinking. They get me thinking. And I like that because it's good to think, right? We should all be thinking, right? Yeah. Thinking good. Thinking good. Anyway, let's dive in. The first thing that I really wanted to go into was just some conversation around when rituals go wrong. I thought initially when Austin and I kind of talked about topic suggestions for the regular episodes of the podcast, we kind of thought this might be a good topic for the regular podcast, but I kind of thought that maybe it would be better to talk about this on Esoterica because it is well, I'm just going to admit it. I kind of wanted to talk about this one just because I don't know. I'm being stingy. I'm being selfish with you all. And I wanted to talk about this and be the sole voice, I guess, on this. Oh God, I'm a monster. Too much ego. When rituals go wrong. I think that people, practitioners of whatever variety, I think that there's this idea that when you get to the point where you're getting practical with your magic, that which takes a lot of I think of gumption. You know, it takes a lot for people to get to that point where they're really ready even just to get practical. You know, I was having an exchange with someone on Threads, the shop Cat and Cauldron. We do have a Threads account. I've been posting there pretty consistently over the last few weeks. Spell advice, ethical practice kind of advice. Just if you guys are on Threads, go check us out. We post some interesting stuff on there. You know, do get a little political on there, but if you've been following us on the podcast here for a time, you know that we do tend to do that. Um, Good political, I think. Good political. Not too, you know, we're not nasty, we're not mean. We're just basically educational, which is all we really try to focus on. But I was having an exchange with someone there on that platform about just really just it can take a lot. It takes a lot of I think nerve and it does and bravery really. It takes courage to get to a point where we take everything that we've gotten from our books, from our teachers, from our mentors, wherever, right? And we take all that and we get to a point where we're really putting it into a practical kind of a format, right? A lot of people never get there, you know, and that's really unfortunate. You know, I've met several people over the years, you know, and I kind of nickname these people armchair occultists, you know, where they have so much knowledge, but they don't ever really do anything with it, you know, and it's so unfortunate because I'm kind of the opinion that if you have spent a lot of time collecting knowledge and cultivating just knowledge of something, you know, to never really utilize that knowledge for anything, to never really get practical with that is it seems wasteful. It seems wasteful. Um, I think most people could agree with me on that. You know, and that would be true for anything, not just the metaphysical, right? So, but I want to first say that, you know, that getting practical, getting to the point where you're doing ritual already that's a huge step, you know, and I think that already going into ritual, having already kind of faced that, that challenge of confidence, right? It can be tricky going in because you're, already approaching your ritual maybe with a little bit of trepidation. And then there's a moment inevitably for all of us where the ritual that you're doing, whatever ritual it's going to be, just does not crack off the way that you want it to. It just does not go the way you want it to, and that could be for there could be 1,000 reasons for that. I'm thinking back over the years, just to share some personal examples with you, right? I mean, it could be something as simple as you've laid out an elaborate altar. You have consecrated all your items. You have invited all of the participants into the space. You have blessed and anointed everyone. You have gotten several cadences into incantation, and someone's fucking cell phone goes off. Right? That's a big one these days, particularly because we all love our devices, right? And of course we love our devices, right? I'm talking to you on one right now, right? But people have a hard time disconnecting. There are people out there who I think are like legitimately addicted to their devices. And when you tell people like, hey, you got to turn off your phone for this, like the look of concern, we have this happen regularly at the shop. Like people will come to ritual and we're like, you got to turn your phone off. And like the look of panic, like that goes through these people. It's like, oh my God, I might be disconnected from my Instagram account for 15 minutes. And it's like that's too much for them to bear, right? And then they do it and they do the ritual, and then they realize coming out of the ritual, like that you were fine. The world did indeed not implode in that 15-minute time frame, right? And to be fair, our rituals usually go on a lot longer than 15 minutes, but but regardless, they're okay, right? They're okay, and I think that that's a good moment for them, right? It's a good thing because they have the opportunity then for a good experience with the ritual, but they also then have the ability to see like, oh wow, I could actually like unplug for a minute, and the world didn't end, you know. I'm going off on this cell phone tangent, and I really didn't mean to do that. I'm so sorry. Um, Anyway, cell phones going off. It could be something as simple as, oh God, you've prepared candles for your ritual, right? And in the process of preparing your candles, perhaps you have overdressed your candles and they've got maybe too much oil on them, right? And the wick burns down to a point where it really hits the wax and fire goes out, right? And you're like, oh shit, got got to stop everything and relight my candles, right? Or as they do in the theater, right? The show must go on, right? But that can be kind of awkward, right? Because you could be sitting there talking about the flame of the candle captures the essence of the fire elemental, and and you're like looking at candles and there's no flame, right? So you got to relight your candles, right? So, it could be something as simple as that, I mean, and then it could be something really elaborate, it could be something really complicated in a ritual. Like it could be something like you are evoking a particular spirit, and because of something like a mispronunciation of a name, or something like the an error in a particular seal that you have transcribed on a surface, on an altar or on a floor space, you don't get the right spirit, right? I've seen that happen as well, right? And then you have to then figure out kind of, in the middle of everything, like, oh, what do we do? What do we do? Right? And I've seen those moments happen as well. That one I've been lucky enough not to deal with. I have not had the wrong spirits show up, at least not in a ritual context. I've had wrong spirits show up during seances. Um, but that's a very different process. That tends to be less of a ceremonial kind of a process, and kind of just more of a like, hey, just lots of people in the room and everybody has somebody they want to talk to, and we thought we were talking to this person's spirit, but no, indeed, it was this person's spirit, right? Uh, so it's those physical logistics, it can be something that can be a very human kind of a thing. There are moments, and this has happened in rituals that Austin and I have facilitated, where we've been we've been in the middle of a ritual, and a participant in the ritual will have an emotional response to the ritual. There have been a number of times where we've been doing ritual and someone in the room will have an emotional response, and they will break down, and they will be just sobbing just sobbing, like they're having a very powerful emotional release, and in that moment we can't really stop the ritual for that one person. So what we typically do is we have, a member of our group, someone who is there, and it's a good idea to have these things arranged prior to the beginning of the ritual, but we will have someone on hand to kind of go and collect that person and kind of take them out of the flow of the ritual. They're still in the space, they still are a participant in that way, right? But then they have, kind of like a corner, a personal space of quiet, right, to be able to continue to process what they're feeling, and they're not interrupting the experience for others, right? And that's kind of how you have to handle those moments, right? It could be issues with music, if you are lucky enough to be playing live music, very often people like to incorporate drums and other types of rhythm into ritual, and sometimes you miss a beat, right? And then when that happens, you just find the rhythm and you keep going. You can't stop the drum. You got to just find the rhythm and you keep going. It could be a situation where maybe you're playing pre-recorded music over, like on a sound system, on a speaker, and there's a glitch, like the Bluetooth connection goes down and all of a sudden the music cuts out, right? Like in that moment, you have to kind of figure out, okay, what's the best answer for this? What is the best way to continue to keep the ritual going? You need to keep the ritual going. It is important to remember that when we're doing ritual, while ritual cannot just be performative, okay, there is absolutely a performative element to ritual. There has to be. That's ritual, right? But ritual cannot just be performative, should not just be performative. If you are doing ritual that is just purely performative, just to say you did the thing, you're wasting your time. There needs to be a purpose. There needs to be a purpose, and there should be some result from the ritual. Ideally, beyond just entertainment. People who go into spiritual practice just to be entertained. Again, nothing necessarily wrong. We should absolutely be having fun with what we're doing with our spiritual work, right? But if your sole purpose in doing whatever you're doing spiritually is just to be entertained, you're really never going to be able to see the growth in your practice that you need to, because a lot of the big growth that happens is not going to be happening in the moments where you're having fun. It's going to be in the moments where, God, this really sucks. This is awful. I'm angry. This is disappointing. This hurts. And in those moments, that's where you're going to see very powerful realization, or you will experience like a leveling up of your power. So be mindful of that. Okay. But because of the performative element to ritual, you need to consider that, much again, as I mentioned a few moments ago, much like theater, you need to remember, like on stage, something goes wrong. The actors should not, if they're professionals, they should not panic. They should not stop performing. They keep going. They keep going, right? And a good audience will see that and recognize, like, these are professionals. They had a glitch. There was a technical issue. Somebody forgot a line, right? But they picked it up and they went with it, right? And these are professionals, right? And that's how you need to perform and approach ritual. So, yeah, things will happen in ritual. There is not a single practitioner out there that is going to have like a 100% no fail. Like, I've never had a ritual go wrong. I've never had an error occur. Like that doesn't happen. If you ever run into anybody, it's like, I've never had an issue. I've never had anything go wrong in a ritual. That person is full of shit. That person is full of shit. Or they are so full of themselves and they are so oblivious to what is going on in the ritual that they haven't noticed. They haven't noticed. And good for them, right? But what that also tells me is that person is so caught up. They are so caught up in what that ritual is meant to be for them that they have not given a shit. They do not care. They do not care about what that ritual is ultimately achieving for the other people who are there. right? And if you're doing group or public ritual, you have to care about everybody's experience. Your experience is important, but everybody's there together. It's teamwork, right? So I want you guys to remember that. And again, Jack, you asked this question. I think it's a really good question. Um, and I think it's important for us all to remember that though we are powerful practitioners, we are powerful witches, occultists, whatever title you choose to slap on yourself, right? Um, though we're all still human, and we are still dealing with a very third dimensional physical world where shit goes wrong. Shit goes wrong. And we need to not beat ourselves up for those moments. And in fact, I think sometimes that we, in hindsight, can go back and we can, in time and with experience, we can appreciate those moments because I will tell you right now that there have been over the years in some ritual work that I've done, there have been some very happy accidents that I have had in ritual where something has happened in a way where it's actually made the ritual better, better than it was when I planned it or when I organized it. You know, I for instance, like Austin and I were talking about just this morning, he did a ritual at the shop just last night for the Temple of Apotropeia. Um, and it was just kind of a fluky thing, but he had a cauldron burning and there was a point during the ritual where basically the flame in the cauldron went out. And it was not his intent for that to happen, but it happened at a time that was magical. Like it happened at a time where one particular attendant to that ritual was just like, oh my God. Like that was just like this that just the timing, the synchronicity of that moment for the flame to go out. Like for them, that was just like, oh wow, oh my God. Like that was supposed to happen. And that was, oh my God, wow. Like for them, that was magic, you know? Um, and so, so those things that can happen, they can make ritual better, and you might be as someone who is organizing, someone who is planned, someone who has arranged, someone who is facilitating and leading the ritual. You might be looking at those moments like, oh my God, I'm such a failure. Oh my God, why can't I do this right? The other people in the room could be having a very different experience, right? And you need to not beat yourself up. Okay. Um, there's kind of a rule that we had in our old coven. And if we ever get to a point where we have another coven, I don't know that I ever see that happening. But if there's a kind of a rule that we had in our old coven that whoever was the one centering, whoever was the one facilitating ritual, um, that person or that everyone else in the group that they didn't have a right to criticize. That if something happened, oh well, hello, Roxy. That if something went wrong, if something occurred in that ritual that they maybe were not happy about, that if they had not been directly responsible for planning that ritual, if they had not stepped up to facilitate that ritual in some capacity, they had no voice. They needed to shut up. That the only person that was in a position to critique that ritual or that spell was the person who organized it, who arranged it, and maybe elders in the coven, right? And even then, the elders in the coven, the only critique that we were ever allowed to give would have to be somewhere along the lines of like, there was this one piece, right, that maybe did not adhere as closely to coven tradition. You didn't do anything wrong, right? Um, but this is something maybe to consider next time, right? And that would be it. That would be the end of the conversation, right? So, so remember that. Please stop beating yourselves up and please do ritual, right? Your practical work when you are doing your spiritual work, when you are pursuing your spiritual path, your practical work is is so necessary. It is so vital for you to have that experience. And if you are getting in your head if you are shutting yourself down because you are afraid to make a mistake or because you have made a mistake and now that is something that is festering in you to the point that you're like, oh, I can't ever do another ritual again, right? You are seriously hindering your growth. And that's really unfortunate. So yeah, so I wanted to talk about that a little bit. Okay. Now we have a whole bunch of stuff here, other questions that came in. Okay, so I'm going to go through and I'm going to kind of read these. Okay, so bear with me just for a moment as I kind of go through. Let's see. So I talked about on the last Esoterica episode, I kind of talked a little bit about fear and how fear can shut us down. And and just as a kind of a quick kind of flashback, that I talked about fear because that episode came out about 3 days after the US 2024 US elections came out. And the result of the election, I think, had a lot of us feeling a lot of people, myself included, feeling a little bit of fear around like, oh my God, what does the future hold for us? So many of us. Oh my God, right? And um, and I want to say right now, I think we'll be okay. I think we're going to survive. We'll be okay. There will certainly be a little bit of hardship here. There will be some groups that we know are certainly going to be targeted, and we need to organize and we need to work together to support each other. But we will weather this storm. Absolutely. Right? We've done it before. We'll do it again. Right? And so, in talking about fear on that last episode of Esoterica, that's why. That's why. But I addressed fear on that episode kind of from the perspective that fear is something that will shut us down. It will shut us down, and it will limit our ability to properly focus our spiritually. It'll limit our ability to be able to really fully connect to our spiritual practices in the ways that we want to. So, in following up on that information, the question came through that basically the question is, how could we use that fear in a way that benefits us, right? Is like, see, where we say using that fear or redirecting it, could it give us power or maybe even be channeled into courage? So let's address that first, because this is kind of a second part or two-parter kind of question or multi-part kind of question. So fear is interesting, and as far as how we put that into how we could channel that into our magical work, our spiritual work, fear is something that is an excellent motivator because when we are fearful of something, we realize when we recognize fear, when fear comes up in us, we know on a primal level that we know we need to take action, right? That is the basis for what we all hear, we learn of like kind of like that fight or flight response, right? And in the last several years or a little longer than that, it's gone from fight or flight to like fight, flight, freeze, or oh God, there's a fourth one now. I can't remember. Oh my God. There are just these different ways that we all respond, right? When we find ourselves in a moment where we are dealing with confrontation, typically, right? When that adrenaline kicks in and we find ourselves in a moment where we're having like basically a fear response, right? And so when we have that moment, I don't know that there is really an effective way to channel our personal fear into magic. It is emotion, but it's not the kind of emotion that is really constructive, right? So the way that we could work with it is that we could recognize it that when we're feeling fear, that is usually a sign to us that like we need to take action. We need to take action. Right. And so in that moment, as we apply fear, if we looked at examples on how we could apply fear to our magical practice, what I would say is that we could apply fear to our magic or we could utilize it as a sign to us like, oh wow, like I need to take action. Like I need to do something, right? I now is the time to do some sort of work, maybe personal work to ground, to center. Now is time for me to learn more about this issue that has brought this fear up in me, right? To educate myself, right? Because sometimes if we educate ourselves, the fear goes away. A lot of times fear is a response to something that we just don't know enough about, right? Um, Sometimes it's like, I need to do a spell on this right now. And that spell could be any of a number of things, right? It could be a spell for protection to make ourselves a little bit safer against the thing that makes us fearful, right? It could be a spell to protect someone else who is being targeted, right? And we're afraid for them, right? It could be a spell to attack the thing that is causing the fear, right? I mean, there are so many ways that we can respond, right? So I think that fear, when we're looking at how we apply it to magic, I think that like personal fear, when we're looking at how we apply that to magic, that really is going to probably be the best or the most constructive way to really to work with it. We use it as a sign, like, oh, I need to take action, right? It's kind of like a big flag that goes up, like, oh, time to do something, right? I got to do something, right? A lot of people, I think, when they experience fear, their response is to like they just retreat, and there's nothing wrong with that as well. There's nothing wrong with saying like, oh, I'm not prepared. I'm not in a position to handle this, and being honest about that with ourselves. There's nothing wrong with that, right? I think there are a lot of people that feel weak or like cowardly, like they lack courage because in that moment they don't rush into a fight, right? But that is not always the best answer, right? To rush into battle is not always the best answer. And so I think that we need to be honest about that, and we need to realize that sometimes that moment is not the time to go on the offensive. But to still acknowledge that and use that as a sign, like, oh, I need to do something, right? Now, personal fear is different than fear coming from other people, right? Personal fear is all ours, and we don't want to put that into a spell because ultimately all that's going to do is amplify our fear, right? Um, what we need to do then is we need to then kind of look at how we can influence fear in the target of a spell, right? And that is where we can effectively work magic, right? But that would be kind of a different issue. That would be a different situation, right? That's where we're effectively working with just baneful magic, right? We're working and structuring a spell around something that we know would instill fear or would trigger a fear response in the enemy, right? Or the target. So it's a little bit of a different situation than the one that I was addressing in our last episode, right? All right, second question, our second part of this question, okay? Um, would it be a smart decision to generate a servitor that can feed off of that fear and possibly attack the source? Um, in answer to this, I'm gonna probably say that while I love to work with servitors and while I think servitors can be really helpful for us as magical allies, I don't know that creating a servitor and programming that servitor to feed on fear is going to be a good idea. The problem with that, the challenging thing with servitors, particularly when we look at how we create them and what we choose for them to feed on, is that we need to be really careful about how we set our rules around that. Servitors are such, they're thought forms that we can create in our occult practices. Uh, that over time, depending on what they're being fed with, they can become stronger and they can cultivate enough strength and power of their own and build enough of an intelligence of their own that if they get to a point where they are not actively being offered food, if we are not actively giving them the thing that we initially promised, they will find another way to get that food. It's been probably easily a couple of years ago, but I tell a story sometimes about how many years ago, as I was a very arrogant and foolish occultist, and as I was working with servitors a bit more at that point in my practice, I made a servitor, I structured a servitor that was basically I programmed it, I structured it, and I fed it on blood, my blood. And I got to a point, I think this was I'm not going to share what I created the servitor for, but I was in college at the time and dealing with that, and I was working like this little like bullshit part-time job. I was busy, right? I was busy in the ways that young people often are, where we think we're busy, but we're really not, right? And I was busy, right? And I got sloppy with my spiritual practice, and I neglected that servitor. And I looking back now, and well, not looking back now, I mean then at the moment, I had an experience one day where it occurred to me after I'd had an accident. Um, and I know I could connect these pieces very clearly because I heard that servitor in my head when this happened. Right. I didn't feed that servitor for several weeks. and it was still doing its work. It was still doing what I asked it to do for me. And I was not holding up my end of the deal, right? I was the asshole in that situation, right? And I was in the kitchen, I was preparing something for food, right? I had promised this thing my blood as food. I was cooking something, I was chopping something, and I sliced my hand open like badly, blood everywhere. And as soon as that knife went through my skin and just blood all over the cutting board, right? I heard that servitor's voice in my head. And that servitor told me, I will get my blood one way or another. And I tell that I share that as kind of a cautionary tale here and there to people who express they want to work with servitors and they are curious about what to feed servitors because those spirits they will get their food one way or another. And when we talk about creating a servitor and making it setting it up to feed it with something like our fear, if you get to a point, if there's ever a moment where the thing that like you're not afraid anymore, you're not giving that thing fear, like that, for one thing, that's a tricky thing, right? Because who wants to walk around in a constant state of fear to be sustaining a servitor, right? You don't want to be afraid all the time, right? Beyond that, if you get to a point where you're no longer feeling fear, that servitor is then going to probably have to start to do things to make you afraid. So you would need to be very careful about how you crafted that servitor. You would need to be very careful about the termination that you put on that servitor because when you create servitors, it is a good idea to give them a timestamp, right? Like you exist for this frame of time, and at this frame of time, you die. You cease to be. The energy that I have given you to sustain yourself, the energy that I have put into you to create you, then returns to me or dissipates into some other form, right? It is a good idea to do that with your servitors. Um, and you would need to in a situation like this. Otherwise, you could end up with you could end up in real trouble with that, you know. And even then, that gets tricky because if you were to do that, then that servitor could potentially end up terminating, and that situation that has you feeling fearful is still ongoing. Right. So I'm going to say that in this particular instance, I don't know that a servitor would be the best option. Um, there are maybe better ways. Or if you wanted to work with a servitor, you certainly could, but I would say you need to maybe focus that servitor on something else, some other aspect of that situation, not your fear necessarily. And certainly give it something else, feed it with something else. All right, let's see. Okay, random question. Opinions on sacrifices. So, good sacrifices, bad sacrifices, and the overall practice of both human and animal sacrifices. Okay, this is kind of a complicated question. Let's see. Okay, I'm going to take this kind of piece by piece. Okay, let's see. Okay, making sure I'm not missing anything here. Okay, okay, good sacrifices. Okay, sacrifices are when we look at the nature of sacrifice, okay, it's important to remember that most of the time sacrifices need to be very specific to ultimately what we are making the sacrifice to. You know, there are spirits out there, you know, say, like just for instance, right, spirits that are maybe more closely tied to, say, like ATRs, like African traditional religions, um, uh, the folk traditions coming out of, say, like Latin America, you know, like these kinds of practices, right? Santeria, you know, these kinds of this family of practices, right? Because there are many in that. That's like there's like an umbrella of practices there, right? And the spirits that are commonly worked within those practices, right? There's belief that those are spirits that typically they want specific offerings. And the reason for that is because those spirits usually have a taste. They have a taste or a value in the human things. They like sweets, they like chocolate, they like sugar, they like tobacco, they like liquor, right? The stronger and the darker the better, right? You know, they like these things, you know, they want rich things, they want luxury, they want the things that we place specific value on, and it is that right there. It is that right there that is the key to sacrifice in really any practice, right? Regardless of what we're giving. When we look at the idea of what is a good sacrifice, what is a bad sacrifice, it is really important to remember that the nature of sacrifice is not so much about what it is we are giving, unless the spirit has requested or is known to take a particular, to accept or want a particular thing. The nature of sacrifice is really the measure, the balance of what is that thing worth to you. If you are someone that is going to sacrifice, oh God, let me think. Okay, this is going to be a really horrible example, right? And in no way am I trying to condone this, right? I'm not saying this is a bad thing, right? But because this is an acceptable practice in many traditions, right? But say you are someone who, like, you hate dogs, right? Like, you hate dogs. I don't know why. Dogs are lovely. I have one here behind me. She's adorable. Look at this little face. And there's another one over here off camera you cannot see. Management, we call them, right? But say you hate dogs, right? And say you're working with a spirit that's like, I want you to sacrifice a dog, right? The thing is that spirit probably would not ask that of you, because that spirit has been watching you. It's not that that spirit is reading your mind and knows that you hate dogs, but that spirit is probably watching you, because those spirits exist outside of linear time, and they can see over the course of your life that you have behaved in a way that has shown them, like, oh, this person doesn't like dogs, right? So for you to sacrifice a dog, that's not a problem for you, because you don't value that dog's life. There is no value in that dog's life for you. You hate dogs, right? So they're not going to ask you to sacrifice a dog, right? Because there's no value in that for you. It means nothing, right? So it is the value and the meaning behind the sacrifice. That is one of the reasons why blood sacrifice is so powerful. And that means your blood, someone else's blood, is because blood is necessary for life. We need blood, right? And maybe like a few drops is not that big a deal, right? But the idea behind that, right? Like, this is something that I kind of need. This is something I need. So another example perhaps would be like somebody living in the middle of a desert where water is extremely hard to come by, where you're living in like areas like the Sahara, where like constant, like, water is just always a struggle, always a struggle. No water, no water, water hard to find, right? For someone who is practicing magically and making offerings to spirits in that area of the world, to make an offering of water, that would carry great meaning, because that water is extremely hard to come by, and the living person, the practitioner in that instance, they need that water to survive. So it is not so much that something is a better sacrifice than another. It is really going to come down to what is the value of this, as it relates to the placement of value and the meaning of it to the practitioner, right? Spirits that accept sacrifices want to know that what you are giving them is something that also means something to you, that it is something that you also would like to keep and have this, that this is something that you can also use. If it is a meaningless gift, if it is a meaningless offering, oh, really, to be honest, is probably not going to really be a good sacrifice. And I'm not trying to say that that means that it's not a sacrifice you can't make, right? Because sacrifices are really something that you really probably only need to be making if you're kind of asking for like a big favor, right? If you're doing ritual work where you're asking that spirit to, I really need you to do it, like a big favor for me, like I'm doing a spell and I want the help of this spirit, like that's what you really probably want to be doing, like a big offering, right? Or maybe in the process of trying to build a relationship with the spirit, that's when you're like, okay, I need to do a big offering for this, right? I need to show this spirit, like, yeah, I'm serious about this. I want this. I want them, right? That's when you're really doing that work primarily. Okay, once you've got that connection, right, and you're just making offerings to the spirit, most of the time, those kinds of offerings, those can be simple things, right? That can be incense and water and, and a small plate of food, right? At that point, a lot of it comes down to just your adoration and your love and your appreciation for that spirit, right? And the time that you invest, the way that you talk to them, right? Um, that's a lot of it right there, right? So I want all of you, you who asked the question, Jack, and I want a lot of you to also, to maybe retrain your thinking on that a little bit, unless you're dealing with a spirit that is known to want a very specific type of sacrifice, you probably want to retrain your thinking around like, oh, this is a good one or this is a bad one, right? Because it's really going to vary so much. The main thing measurement there is ultimately is what you are sacrificing. Is it something that you also find value in? Because that's what they want. That's what they want. Um, all right, another part of this question. Okay, the overall practice of human and animal sacrifice and how this would theoretically speaking be accepted by the gods and other powerful spirits. Well, I think we know historically that gods love human sacrifice and animal sacrifice. I mean, that's a really common thing, right? But again, I think a lot of that comes down to the concept of value in something, right? Like I think that human life has value, right? I think that when we look at cultures, and there's this misunderstanding, I think, and when we look at even archaeological evidence and and historians, theologians who talk about this, I think there's this misunderstanding or this idea that um, cultures who were really well known for human sacrifice. Like the Mayans just came to my mind, right? Because the Mayans were like their practice of human sacrifice was like prolific. Like that was a very common thing. Like thousands and thousands and thousands of people, right, were sacrificed. They find these mass graves, under temples and things. Um, of people that were ritualistically sacrificed. I think that there's this idea that in a lot of people's minds that, oh God, these cultures just didn't have any value for human life. Like they were just so happy just to kill these people, and sacrifice them to their pagan gods, and that's not true at all. That, the reality is that these people valued life a lot. They valued life greatly. Um, and they obviously they had kind of a funny way of showing it, right? But if you look at the concept of sacrifice and what that meant to them, right? It was an honor. As odd as that seems to us now, it was an honor to give your life to a god, and to be a priest or a priestess in a temple who was ultimately responsible for taking that life, right? That was a grave responsibility. That was an extreme, that was very important work. You did not take those lives easily, right? That was very important work. And those were very important souls, very important offerings, right? And so these were cultures that I think actually had a lot of reverence for human life. They recognized that human life was a very powerful offering, a very powerful sacrifice. And in saying that, I don't believe that we should ever go back to those times, right? I think that we understand now that human sacrifice is something that we don't need to do, right? And I think even many gods in conversation with deities, many practitioners have validated now that many gods have come forward and have said that we don't need to go back to those times, that human sacrifice is no longer necessary. That we don't need that. We don't ask for that. We don't need that of you, right? I've had numbers of conversations with practitioners in connection with many different deities who have said, "Oh yeah, they've told me repeatedly now that like we don't need to go back to that point. That's not necessary." So we can safely move away from that, continue to move away from that, right? Animal sacrifice, I think, to be honest, more and more is kind of the same. It does still occur in many practices, and in no way am I going to demonize those practices. I think that animal sacrifice is still, as it occurs in those practices, is significant. I think that it is still important to those practices. And as those people still continue to place value in that, we need to give them that is part of their spirituality, and it is okay. It is okay. I would not choose that for myself. I would have a very difficult time hurting an animal in that way. But I will not tell someone else that they can't do that or that they are wrong for doing that. That is part of their belief system, right? And just one more thing on that, I want to be clear that human sacrifice and animal sacrifice is something that has occurred in every religion. That is something that occurred in all of the Abrahamic religions. Christianity in particular is a big one for loving to center an argument around how pagans love to sacrifice, human sacrifice, human sacrifice. Human sacrifice is everywhere in the Bible. It was encouraged by Jehovah himself, right? As a test of faith, right? We have that in scripture, biblical scripture, and in texts that predate the Bible. So those of you maybe who have a little bit of Christianity in your backbones, I want you to remember that human sacrifice and animal sacrifice is something that was done in every culture, and in every religion, including Abrahamic faith of Christianity. Um, God, those older cultures, the ones that actually originated Christianity, they were very well known, and it has been documented that they actually commonly sacrificed children to their gods. That was a very common practice in the Ugaritic tribes of that area, who were worshiping Yahweh, who were worshiping Jehovah, Adonai, whatever you want to call him, right? So I think that gods, many of them did and still do, probably still do value and still do appreciate sacrifice of life, human, animal, right? But I don't think that we really need to be doing that. And I don't know, let's see. The last part of that question was which gods? Um, ugh. Well, I mean, off the top of my head, gods of war, right? Gods of war love to see life taken, right? For them, it's kind of a game, war, right? And there are many gods of war, right? I think gods associated with death, right? Um, Primarily death, right? Um, God, I mean, there are many, gods associated with the underworld, again, gods of war, gods associated with nature, I mean, there are many, you know, um, yeah, I think under the right circumstances, I think pretty much really any god could probably be in a position to accept or to still find value in a sacrifice like that. But I don't know that they all still necessarily need that. I don't think that I don't believe that that's necessary. Even they, if are like, it's not really necessary. We can accept other things. Um, let's see. What would be the effect gained by sacrificing humans to, let's see. Oh, what would be the effect of sacrificing humans to living men like kings or priests or other? Well, I mean, we've done that too, right? I mean, we look at things that have happened historically. I mean, we look at say like got old cultural things like the Colosseum, like the gladiator fights in the Colosseum. Those were in essence kind of a very perverse form of public sacrifice, right? And to the entertainment of the emperors, right? And the aristocracy of those ancient cultures and the public, right? I mean, it was just the thing that you did, right? Oh, we're going to go to the Colosseum today and we're going to watch people die, right? And it's gross and wrong, right? Um, but it's really not too far off. I mean, other than the fact that people aren't, generally dying all the time, but it's not too far of a stretch from what we see today with things like MMA fighting. We've got like UFC fighting and, even like professional sports like football, right? Where these men are out there, like they beat the shit out of each other for our entertainment, right? Like I mean, and in the process, like they destroy their bodies, right? Like after 10 years, like those athletes, like their bodies are never the same ever, right? The injuries they sustain, right? Like boxers and UFC fighters, my God, like how many of them in their latter years end up with like dementia and things because they've taken so many blows to the head, right? I mean, these are in essence, these are people who they're making huge sacrifices of their lives and their health, right? For our entertainment, right? I don't really see a benefit at this point to, or I would not understand other than the potential benefit of like political uh power, say like sacrificing one political opponent to the benefit of another political opponent's agenda or regime. I wouldn't really see an energetic benefit to sacrificing a person to another living person. Um, that there just wouldn't be a benefit there. For one thing, that living person, like in your example, like a king or a priest, that king or priest does not have, on average, does not have the energetic means of being able to process the energy of that sacrifice in the way that, say, something like another type of spirit, any incorporeal spirit or a deity would. So I couldn't really see a benefit to that other than, again, like worldly kinds of things, right? Like sacrificing the leader of one country to, the leader of another country in the process of, say, like, that one country taking over the other country, right? I mean, there would be a very clear benefit there, politically, economically, right? But that would be it. It would be the human stuff, right? Not energetically. Yeah, I don't know. It's an interesting idea. Again, since we're talking so much about sacrifice and the killing of humans, I do want to again remind you all, please don't go out and sacrifice and kill people, right? This is not a good thing, right? Not a good thing. Not a good thing. Let's see. All right, I think we got those all covered. Right, let's see. Switching back to a couple of other little things here that I also had on the agenda. Actually, that's pretty much it, to be honest. All right, let's talk about a spell. Give me just a second here to pull up my notes. All right, y'all. Let's see. Okay, so this spell is basically going to prepare you or set you up to make or to craft a warding spell. Okay, warding is just, it's another word for basically just asserting a magical boundary. That's all it is. Okay, a ward is something that in essence allows you to create and to maintain a particular type of energy within a certain space. That's all a ward is. Okay. And it can be any kind of energy. You can create a ward in your bedroom so that every time you and your partner are in that space, you're like, ooh, hey, we should have sexy times, right? I know I sound super mature, right? Sexy times. Right. Or you could create a ward in your kitchen, right? For for like your family, like, hey, every time we're in this space, everybody's gonna have like an appetite, right? Like, hey, we're in here to eat, right? Um, I don't know. I mean, it could be anything, right? Like you could create a ward in your office. Like, hey, every time I'm in here, I'm going to be super productive. I'm going to be focused on my job, right? But most commonly, people will create wards for protection, right? Or to keep unwanted energies out of given spaces, right? So this is a really effective way to do this, okay? I like to work with sound for warding primarily because a lot of people like to do smoke cleansing. Okay. The challenging thing with smoke more and more is people have allergies. I have allergies. I don't want to constantly be smoking my house. Okay. For a lot of things people don't realize about all the herb cleansing and herb smoking that people do is like also if you have animals in your house, your animals can also be highly susceptible to all that smoke. Okay. A lot of smoke ultimately also kind of settles on things. You end up with like grime on your walls and stuff. Like, I wonder sometimes I talk with people that are like, oh, I sage my house every day, and I just have to shake my head at those people because, for one thing, their house energetically has to be a disaster. Ugh. Okay. They're usually also dreadlocked white people who have no business using sage. Okay. And also, their walls have to have grime on them from all of that smoke. Right? You ever been to like a smoker's house? If any of you are smokers, please, I'm not trying to shit on you if you're a smoker. Okay. Do what you want to do. Right? But if you are someone is smoking, if there is smoke consistently in a given space, there's going to be soot on those walls. Right? You got to wipe your walls. You got to clean your walls. Right? So instead of using smoke cleansing. right? I like to work with sound because it's so easy. And once this is prepared, you have a tool that you can use again and again and again, right? You do need to re-up this tool about every 6 months or so. You'll need to recharge this, okay? But every 6 months, I mean, my God, that's easy. Put a reminder in your phone, right? It could not be simpler, okay? And this is very effective, right? So to do this, okay, right, you're gonna need, okay, a bell, sorry, I have a cold and my nose is stuffy, so a bell, okay, with a chime that you like to hear the sound of, okay? If you don't like hearing the sound of this, you're not going to do this because you don't want to hear that bell chime, right? So find a bell that you like the sound of. Okay. Right. So a bell that you like the sound of. Okay. And some rosemary essential oil. Okay. Easy stuff. Right. Okay. You're going to want to do this work on a Wednesday. Okay. Ideally, midday. Okay. You want some full sun for this. Okay. It doesn't need to be outside. You don't need to be under the full sun. Okay. But you want to have full solar influence for this. Okay. Right. And ideally, if you are someone who really likes to work with those lunar energies as well, during a waxing or a full moon phase. Okay. So we want ideally a full solar energy and a full lunar energy for this. Okay. That way you've got kind of the best of both worlds. You've got that balance, right? Okay, and again on a Wednesday, right? Okay. Anybody want to guess why? Why on Wednesday? I do this, right? I ask you as if you can answer me, right? Wednesday is influenced by Mercury. Mercury is air, and we're working with sound, right? So air, sound, right? That vibration, right? Sound waves, right? Okay, we're in alignment here, right? These are our alignments and our correspondences. Important stuff for effective witchcraft. Okay. All right. So this is how this works. Okay. You sit down, you're gonna bring yourself to focus, right? And you're gonna raise your witch power, right? And there are so many ways to do that, right? We've got to talk about on the podcast a little bit how to do that, right? Move your body, get your energy going, right? When you start to feel your temperature rise, you start to feel your breath quicken, right? Your heart rate, your blood pulse, your pulse increases, right? You've raised power. You're at energy, right? And you can then just direct that energy into what you're doing, right? This is kind of like what we call like you put your body in your work, right? Okay. Good witchcraft. Okay. All right. So you're going to sit down, right? You're going to bring yourself to focus. You're going to raise your power, right? And then you're going to take your rosemary essential oil and you are going to anoint your bell, right? Okay. And that means basically you're going to run that rosemary just a little bit in the palm of your hand, right? Maybe do some of this, right? Between your palms. Okay. And you're going to run your hands around the outside of the bell. Okay. And you're going to get some on your finger and you're going to run your finger around the inside of the bell. Okay. And then you're going to get the clapper, the little thing that moves around that actually makes the bell chime, the clapper. They call that the clapper. Okay. And you're going to get all that. Okay. And you don't need to be exact, right? And you don't need to be like don't totally you don't want that bell to be slimy, right? A little goes a long way with essential oils, okay? All right. Okay, but try to do this if you can, kind of somewhere close to the center of your home as well. Okay? Right? Now, once you've done this, okay, you're gonna get up, you're gonna stand up, right? And you're gonna hold your bell in your active hand. So if you're right-handed, it's your right hand. If you're left-handed, your left hand, right? I realize that's backwards on here, isn't it? Because I mirrored. Sorry. So whichever is your dominant hand, right? Whichever one you write with. I know all you people who are ambidextrous, you're like, oh, well, I do both. And I'm like, okay, well, whichever one you write with, that's the one you want to be doing your dominant, your projective stuff with. Okay. All right. So you're gonna get up, you're gonna hold your bell out before you. Okay. And you're gonna look at your bell, right? I've got my bell in my hand, right? Okay. I'm looking at it, right? Okay. And as I'm staring at my bell, right? I'm going to repeat this incantation. I'm going to speak this incantation out loud to the bell. Okay. Looking at it, talking to it, right? Okay. I realize I'm kind of yelling at you right now. I'm so sorry. I'm not trying to yell at you. I'm just trying to, I want you to get this. I want you to hear this. I want you to feel it. Okay. All right. So looking at the bell, talking to the bell. Okay. And we're going to say, your chime is a shield against all swords. Now sing out and empower my wards. Okay. Your chime is a shield against all swords. Now sing out and empower my wards. Okay. And once you've said that, you're going to ring that bell. Right? You want to hear that bell chime. Okay. And once you've done that, I want you to actually start to move through your house. And ideally, you're going to move in a clockwise direction. Okay. And you want to keep ringing that bell. Okay. That's how this spell, that's how the energy of this ward works, is the voice of the bell, the chime, the sound, the vibrations, they move out. If you guys are familiar with how sound energy works, right? Those sound energy, those vibrations, they move out through a space. And they kind of bounce off surfaces and then they kind of bounce back and they kind of just keep moving, right? Until the energy behind them dissipates, right? But that sound will echo and move through every space, right? Okay. And you move through every space in your house in a clockwise direction. Okay. Right. And as you do this, you can continue to repeat that incantation, right? Your chime is a shield against all swords. Now sing out and empower my wards, right? You can add other words to that, right? You can add other things that you say when you do clearing or protective work in your home, right? It doesn't matter. Okay. It doesn't matter. Okay. But you're going to go through every space, right? And you're continuing to feel that power, right? I am raising a barrier, protection. I am raising a barrier, protection, right? However you need to do that, right? You're laying claim to that space. Okay. All right. So you're going to do that, right? You're going to go through every space kind of it again in the guy loosely, kind of in that clockwise kind of pattern through every space that you can in that house, right? Every room, right? Okay. When you're done, okay, you want to ideally kind of get back to the point where you began. Okay. Okay. Ring that bell one final time. Okay. And you're going to then say, you're going to repeat the final part of the incantation. Okay. The second half. Okay. The final part is your chime like the growl of a hellhound, a scream that keeps my enemies spellbound. Okay. So your chime like the growl of a hellhound, a scream that keeps my enemies spellbound. So at full incantation, right? In two parts, right? First part before you go through the house, second part after, right? Your chime is a shield against all swords. Now sing out and empower my wards. Second part, your chime like the growl of a hellhound, a scream that keeps my enemies spellbound. Okay. All right. Once that's done, you're going to hang that bell somewhere, right? You can ideally, if you get a little bell that's got like a little loop or something in the top, you can tie like a little ribbon there, hang that somewhere on a wall, right? Place it on your altar. Doesn't matter, right? But keep it somewhere where it's easy for you to get to, right? And periodically over the course of the next 6 months, maybe once a month, right? Go through, pick that bell up, ring that bell, ring that bell, hear that chime, right? You're good. 6 months time, repeat that process, right? And this is a very effective way to ward and to protect your space. You could do this anywhere. You could do this anywhere. And if it's a public space, obviously make sure you get permission, right? But you can do this anywhere. You could do this in a business, right? I've actually in past, I've found this really helpful to do this in situations where if you've got where you're familiar with a space like say like a community center kind of space that you know might be targeted by like hate groups or something, you know, like your local pride center, or say like a local center for oh my gosh, like here in town, like we have a center for like the Black Lives Matter movement, right? We have a like an Indigenous American community center here. We have a Jewish community center here. Like places like that you know might potentially be targeted, right? You can go in to those spaces, right? And depending on who you're dealing with, you know, you might not want to give them all like the full story, like, oh, you know, like this, I'm a witch and this is what you know, you don't necessarily know that you need to give them all that, right? Because there's subtlety and a little bit of manipulation to witchcraft, right? Sometimes we need to be a little sneaky, right? We're not hurting anybody, right? But we need to be a little sneaky, right? Okay. But you can go in if you choose to do this and you can make a gift of this bell. You can say, like, I prepared this, you know, and sometimes it can be nice to actually go and like actually like find a bell that will kind of represent that group, right? Like if you're going to give a bell, say to like the Pride Center, find a bell maybe that has like a rainbow on it, right? Or Or oh God, like the Jewish Community Center here, right? Like you could go like around this time of year, right? Like it would be really easy to find a bell that had like some sort of representation of Hanukkah, right, on it, and go and say like I just want to kind of give this as a gift to maybe say like, oh God, who knows, right? Like just someone there, or like someone maybe who works in the reception area, right? And just let them know, like just say like, hey, like you can keep this here, right? And just like and just this is just a gift, right? And then ultimately at that point, whatever they do with that, like that's on them, right? But what you have potentially done in that moment is you have given them the gift of protection. You have given them a tool that they can use if they choose to, right? You've given them this tool that they can then use, and every time over the following 6 months that somebody in that space might ring that bell, they are enacting a barrier of protection around that space, right? And so it's a really effective way to work some really good magic, and to protect some people in the process. So and right now we're trying to do all the work that we can around that, right? We're dealing with some crazy energies right now and some very emboldened and hateful kind of people right now, and we want that protective energy. We want that protective energy. So there is another spell for you to add to the grimoire, right? Or your book of shadows, whatever you got going on, something to try, maybe, right? And yeah, and I hope you'll at least consider giving that one a try. It's so easy, right? Why not, right? Why not? Give it a try, right? Anyway, I think we're going to call that an episode for this one for Esoterica. And yeah, as always, please send us your questions. Please let us know how we're doing. Please let us know if there's anything that you'd like us to talk about. Let us know if there are any other kinds of maybe spell tips that you would like help with. We are actively organizing here in the anticipation that the next 2 years are going to be kind of scary for a lot of people, us too. Um, yeah, we're feeling nervous, I assure you. Between what we're doing with the organization of the temple and what we hope will be the religious freedoms that we can extend through the temple to members, and the work that we are trying to organize with kind of the magical resistance that we've got kind of going on with information shared here and through a couple of other channels. Um, we're trying to be a resource to whoever it is that ultimately tunes in. Yeah. So hopefully we are doing that work well for you. But if we're not, do let us know. Okay. Anyway, I'm going to quit gabbing and let you get on with your day. Thank you so much, as always, for tuning in. And we'll be back again soon with another episode. Bye for now.